one of the revelations that really came to light as I was researching and writing my book was that there was a whole body of research and information around this phenomenon of workplace bullying. And despite all of my years in the workplace, and including working in human resources and in learning and development, no one ever shared with me, these are some things you should look out for. Here's how you protect yourself from these kinds of behaviors. And became convinced that if I had known to look for some of the patterns and some of the behaviors, if I could have kind of headed some of those behaviors off at the past, I could have maybe not eliminated all of the damage done, all of the harm that was done to me, but I could have probably mitigated some of that. And so I became very passionate about letting people know what to look for, what are some of the behaviors, what are the patterns to look for. And so this definition says that workplace bullying is a persistent, and I always say it's a persistent and consistent pattern of mistreatment from others in the workplace that causes either physical or emotional harm, and they include health harm in this definition. And the reason being is that many targets, and myself included, actually have physical health symptoms, actual physical symptoms, and some even lead to chronic illness, leaving people permanently harmed from their physical harm or their mental health harmed from this targeting. You can see there on the screen that there's a lot of tactics that can be used. Maybe some of you have experienced some of these. They can be verbal or nonverbal. They can be psychological, things like getting you to doubt your own reality. They also could be things like physical intimidation, like bumping into you in the hallway, knocking things out of your hand. Again, it doesn't necessarily raise to the level of assault. We'd be able to deal with that legally, but it's these kind of physical intimidation tactics. Most bullying has some form of humiliation as a part of it, whether that's maybe screaming at somebody in front of other people. It could be a demotion of some kind, right? There's some humiliating factor involved. These are more categories of behaviors, and I don't think I've ever had a target just describe one type of behavior. So in my experience and in talking with others, the bully will maybe do two or more of these behaviors, or maybe pull from all four to target somebody. So the screamer is what we would probably typically think of as the typical bully on the playground. They're angry, they're loud, they're aggressive, they love to humiliate people. The interesting thing about the screamer is that based on research, the screamer is the least common type of workplace bully. And I guess my theory around that is that most organizations might be able to take action at such a visible behavior that they might be able to take action on that effectively and coach somebody into either doing something differently or coaching them out. So it's not the most common type, even though it's the most stereotypical one that we would think of as a bully. So again, some of the tactics, not an exhaustive list, but some of the tactics I might use could be, shouting and being insulting. Could also be using nonverbals in kind of a dramatic way whenever you're mentioning, giving an idea in a meeting. There's these loud scoffs or eye rolling pretty consistently, right? To kind of get people around you to not take you seriously or discredit you. Intimidating physically, getting in your personal space, blocking your exit from a room, which is something that happened to me, which I didn't even realize could be physical intimidation, but trapping somebody in a room, even for a small amount of time, really can feel threatening. And again, as I mentioned, could be things like shoving or bumping into you. The next type is the gatekeeper. The gatekeepers understand that they can undo their target by withholding resources that somebody needs to do their job. This could be things like time. So consistently, you can see in the list, you're consistently giving somebody lots of work or projects with very short timelines, impossible timelines or impossible goals. They could be withholding training that somebody needs to do their job, or even information and excluding them maybe from meetings or other events where they need to be able to do their job. effectively. Much of the behavior of the gatekeeper is very covert. It might actually look like a fairly conservative supervisor if the gatekeeper is a supervisor, somebody who is maybe looking out for the organization's resources or being very fiscally conservative. So again, pretty covert, and you might not even realize that a consistent pattern of withholding resources could be a type of bullying. The critic is the third type. So when we talk about the critic, we're not just talking about somebody who is, a little bit critical or giving you constructive feedback. We're talking about somebody that, in their eyes, you can do no right, despite maybe even trying to correct what they've told you to correct and the way they've told you to correct it, you're still not doing it right. They are overly and inappropriately critical, and they know that they can undo somebody completely by discrediting their performance. So you see a couple of tactics that might be used by the critic. Downplaying something that of significance for your contributions, things that you've done, or your accomplishments, or your degree, questioning your skills or qualifications. They might even remove responsibilities with no explanation or no reason. So again, pretty covert. And maybe if we had experienced like one of these behaviors, we might not necessarily think of it as bullying. But if we saw a consistent pattern of these kinds of behaviors, this definitely would raise to the level of a critic bully. The final type is the deceiver, and the deceiver is the trickiest of all behaviors to look for. And I intentionally use this theater sign to represent the deceiver. On the surface, the deceiver looks very cooperative and friendly. In my case, in my second experience, I experienced a deceiver bully. I did social things with my bully unknowingly. So they are very friendly and collegial on the surface, but behind the scenes, they're discrediting your work, they're spreading rumors. They're also very good at manipulating others to join in with them, either knowingly or unknowingly, join in the targeting with them. And they're very good at gaining the trust of other people. So again, a few of the behaviors you might see, gossiping about you or others, making false accusations about you, intentionally sabotaging work, or using confidential information, maybe that you've shared with them in confidence against you. So let's just go a little deeper with the deceiver, because again, they are the most difficult to detect. And I really reflected, like, how could I have known that this person was targeting me? Well, there were some clues. And as I talked with other targets, I think we're finding some patterns here. So the deceiver, again, in my case, did a lot of gossiping about it was like they couldn't breathe without gossiping about somebody, something. So that again might not all by itself be somebody who is bullying, but might be something that you need to be cautious about, maybe steer clear of. So gossiping or asking you to hold confidences. So why would that indicate a deceiver? So when somebody is asking you to hold confidences, they're entrusting you with their information or their secret. And trust is reciprocal. So you have to give trust to get trust. So what they're trying to do is gain your trust by asking you to hold their secrets, hoping that you'll reveal some of your own secrets. Now, they're not going to hold your confidences. They are probably at some point going to use that against you. Another thing to look out for is what I call managing up. So somebody who is the picture of perfection and just a wonderful employee to anybody that might have power in the organization or have control over their career. But meanwhile, they are not treating anybody else well. Peers, direct reports are being treated horribly. So they have these two sides to them, and they're manipulating their image. So again, just somebody who maybe acts a little bit, or extremely differently in those two different scenarios, again, all by itself might not be a bully, but I always tell people, if you see somebody manipulating their image in that way, again, caution, caution, caution. Just be aware that that could be a sign that somebody is maybe ingratiating themselves to the people who are higher up, and intend to throw other people under the bus. Now, digging for information also can be a sign. So again, they're looking for information about you, they're looking for information about others. And again, they're looking for this information potentially to use it for gossip, but more often than not, probably to use it against somebody at some point, you or somebody else. So again, if you saw one of these or you saw these things occasionally, we wouldn't necessarily say, oh, there's definitely a deceiver bully. But if we see a combination of these or we see a pattern of these over time, there's definitely somebody at play that is doesn't have the best interest of you or colleagues in their mind. So let's talk about the target. This was another really shocking thing for me. Now, anybody at any age could be targeted. I was targeted for the very first time at the age of 23 with a supervisor, a research supervisor in grad school. But actually, the average age of a target is 42. And when you really look at kind of zoom out a little bit, the majority, I think about 75% of targets are between the ages of 30 and 59. So again, anybody at any age, but the majority of them fall between 30 and 59. So what do we know about folks between 30 and 59? They're pretty experienced in their field. They may even be very experienced and hold a lot of institutional knowledge if they've worked for your company for a while. They may have higher degrees. And so these are very experienced people. These are people you want to keep in your organization. You don't want some, random person to drive them out. These are people who oftentimes are the go-to people. They're very collegial. They hold some kind of personal power. People want to be mentored by them, or they hold some kind of professional power. Again, maybe because of their expertise or their long-term experience with the organization or in the industry. And they're oftentimes highly regarded and highly skilled. So again, these are folks who are huge assets to our organizations. And so why is it that somebody would particularly target somebody who seems to be, the consummate professional and a good employee? Well, let's talk a little bit about why bullies bully. Just kind of flowing from that previous slide. We don't really know why bullies bully. We have some theories. Again, the reason we don't know why bullies bully is because most bullies are not raising their hand to be studied. And so we have some theories based on what we know about the way that people were targeted or what happened after people left their workplace, and maybe a pattern of targeting. So one of the very kind of basic reasons we think they bully is because they're jealous. They, through a lack of self-esteem or lack of confidence, look at this professional person who's accomplished a lot, and they say, I can never accomplish that on my own merits. So I am going to discredit them. I'm going to take them down a notch. I'm going to take them out. Excuse me. So it could just be pure jealousy. Another really simple reason could be that they want the target's position. Now, had this not happened to me, I would have probably said, this doesn't happen very frequently, but it actually happens more often than you think. So again, because the bully does not think they can get to where they want to be based on their merits, they need to discredit people. They need to get people out of the way. And so in fact, in my case of my deceiver bully, that person was collegial and friendly to me, but behind the scenes, they were discrediting and ruining my reputation. And at the same time, they were making a case for their own promotion. And in fact, just a few weeks before I left the organization, I was on my way out. I had interviewed. I knew I was going to get an offer any day. But just in those last few weeks, my bully became my boss. So my bully had been promoted, and I had been sort of demoted, and then put underneath in their team. And when I then left a few weeks later, that bully then moved into my position. So I think a lot of the targeting in that case had to do with this person wanting my position. So it's actually more common than you might think. Another reason they might bully is they are distracting from their own transgressions. So if they can keep the spotlight on what other people are doing or other people's performance issues, they other people are not paying attention to the fact that maybe they're coming in late or that they're wasting a lot of company time gossiping, or maybe they're even doing unethical or illegal things. And then another reason we think is that just the pattern of the way that people have in their development have been rewarded for their behaviors. They thrive in this kind of chaos. And so they tend to just create this chaos where there's a lot of people who are upset and people who are maybe leaving, a lot of turnover. And so they just kind of churn that chaos. So again, maybe someday we'll have more data from bullies, but these are just some theories based on what we know from talking to targets.